Battlefield 5 Chapter 7 is happening at some point in the future. Right now we have no specific information as to what Chapter 7 will contain or when it's likely to arrive, but based on several details that we do have surrounding Battlefield 5 generally, I think we can make some educated guesses as to where the game is going next. In this video I'm going to give you my expectations for the next chapter, what I'd like to see, and then what I think realistically is going to happen considering the state of the game and the state of the world at the moment. Obviously, this is all speculation, none of this is confirmed information in any way, and most of it is based off of data mined information. But if you are wanting to keep up to date with all things Battlefield, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. A massive thanks to everyone who did that on my last Battlefield video, by the way. You did help me reach 500,000 subscribers, which is just amazing, but it happened in less than an hour after I posted that video, and we were about 600 subscribers away at that point, so massive thanks to everybody for helping me break that milestone. Without you, this channel wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today. Okay then, first of all, at a high level, I think Chapter 7 is going to follow in the footsteps of Chapter 6 and maintain a similar structure. So that likely means one new multiplayer map, a few new weapons, a couple of gadgets, and a bunch of cosmetic items built into the chapter rewards. Now the reason I think this is because of the situation surrounding the development team at the moment. All of them working from home, that elongates the time it takes to get things done, there's testing roadblocks, etc, etc. I just can't see DICE pulling a brand new theatre of war out of their back pocket right now. As much as that would be awesome, there's just too many blockers in the way, and I don't believe that their work on the new theatre of war is anywhere near finished. As an example, developers who worked on the Pacific launch maps, Iwo Jima and Pacific Storm, they were only starting their work on that content in early 2019, so it took them a good 6, 7, 8 months after that point to complete all of that work and then release it as a milestone update for Battlefield 5. Then consider that the Pacific content stretched from October through November, December, January, and then into February with Solomon Islands. I just don't see how the team would have enough time to complete their work on a new theatre of war within that time frame, whilst also continuing to bolster the Pacific content at the same time. So on that basis, I think Chapter 7 will be very similar to Chapter 6. One new map, and I think it's going to continue the theme of the Pacific for a few more months, with the introduction of the Pacific Ocean map. Something that has already been referenced in the files and discovered by data miner Tempoyal. When it comes to weapons, we still have several unreleased weapons that could make their way into Battlefield 5 really at any point, but if we're talking about another Pacific-themed chapter, there are a few that we can pull from here. The M3 infrared sniper carbine, built by the US Army as a way of combating Japanese soldiers during night fighting, that's been found in the files and it's been present for some time. We've spoken about that one in a couple of previous videos, I think. The Type 44 cavalry rifle, a Japanese carbine, that's also been referenced and would fit the Pacific theme. The Johnson rifle as well, an American-made rival to the M1 Garand. That's been found in the files in a semi-working state, and we've seen Tempoyal release some gameplay of it. So all of those weapons would bolster the weapon pool for the Pacific maps, and it would add value to a third Pacific chapter for Battlefield 5. And then for gadgets, we have some solid information here regarding one new addition, the Doppelschuss. This is a double-barreled flare pistol that can stick flares onto environmental objects like rocks, houses, trees, things like that, and you can also stick them to vehicles, which would allow a moving radar pulse to go through the map for a set period of time. The second barrel houses a flash flare that will disorientate enemies for a few seconds. Now this gadget has already had its in-game tutorial video recorded, and it was set to be released during Chapter 6 supposedly, likely as part of some kind of April update, but first of all it was delayed because the gadget was bugged, how very Battlefield 5 of it, and secondly because there now is no April patch because that's been cancelled and everything's been rolled into the May update. Apparently the Doppelschuss has now been fixed and it will arrive with the May update, but we're not sure when it's actually going to be released. It will be in the files for the May update, but it could be a little while before we see it out there on public servers. Now, as for the length of Chapter 7, that is also up for debate. Right now, we're very nearly finished with Chapter 6. There's a couple of weeks of the Tides of War left. And apart from the launch week and maybe the week after, things have been pretty dry when it comes to content. And when I say pretty dry, I'm actually saying that there's been virtually no more content whatsoever. Chapter 6 is a 12-week chapter. And I think DICE could have shortened it to maybe an 8 or 4-week chapter, kind of similar to the Battlefest mini chapter last summer, which introduced the Operation Underground map and a couple of new weapons. Chapter 6 has been similar in its content delivery to that Battlefest chapter, but DICE chose to make it a fully fledged chapter instead, likely because they plan to fill the second half of it or later parts of it with more new content, but obviously because of external factors that has limited their ability to do that. If Chapter 7 has a similar level of content, which I'm predicting that it does, then DICE might think about reducing the length of the chapter, but I think they'd only do that if they had a good content schedule beyond Chapter 7 that is at an advanced enough point that they would feel confident they could deliver it in that time frame. However, being realistic here, I think Chapter 7 will be another full-length chapter that will be somewhat light on content compared to the previous ones. And I think we're going to see lots more quality of life updates come in Chapter 7. Lots of things are being worked on by the DICE team, and there's been lots of requests for some rather major features that Battlefield 5 is missing. I'm looking at you, Team Balancer, and I'm looking at you, Anti-Cheat. That would be amazing. If those things arrived in Chapter 7, even if things were light on content, then perhaps it would be a more well-rounded chapter. Something else that we can expect in Chapter 7, or indeed the next update to Battlefield 5, are those uniform changes to the British and German factions. These are being done to provide a more authentic look to the base characters in the game, and it's coming in response to community feedback, which is a good step forwards, but I can't help but think that they might be leading towards something else in the future as well. There are kind of two possible directions that DICE could realistically take with Battlefield 5 when it comes to content. They can either return to Western Europe with the Allied invasion starting with the Normandy beach landings and implementing content that depicts the Americans and the British fighting to claw back land from the Germans, or they can go east and they can bring in the Soviet army and they can lay on some battlegrounds depicting the fighting on the Eastern Front. Now personally, I'd prefer to see DICE attempt the Eastern Front and introduce some Russian influence into the game, but I'm sure there's quite a lot of appeal, especially at the moment, to reuse lots of those British, American and German assets that are already in the game and then depict some more action between those nations on some different maps and different locations. It would likely take less resources to go down that route, not needing to re-record any more voice lines, create an entirely new faction with new weapons, vehicles, gadgets, cosmetics, create all those new assets for Eastern Front maps. Returning to the fighting in Western Europe, that would certainly be the easier of the two options. But personally, I'd like to see DICE take a more bold approach and go with the Eastern Front. I think it's really important that DICE continues to try with Battlefield 5 after all the damage that's been done previously with various mistakes and issues that have happened. If DICE shows that they're really going to work through World War II properly and complete that journey, then that would at least say they could keep their word and they'd be true to their word from 2018 when they said that the Tides of War would take us from the start of the war, 1939-1940, right through to the race to Berlin in 1945. Whatever happens though with this Chapter 7 content and any content beyond that, any future chapters that might be on the horizon, I just think it's going to be a really interesting 3 to 6 months for Battlefield 5, purely to see how DICE deals with the current situation that they have on their hands. It's clear that the game has never reached the success levels that DICE and EA wanted it to reach. But the game does need to maintain some momentum if there's to be proper interest in the next Battlefield game in 2021. The reason so many people were interested in Battlefield 5 is because Battlefield 1 did a really good job with its marketing and got a lot of people interested in the franchise, and then of course that momentum needed to be kept up with the last couple of DLCs and updates to keep the franchise on players' radars. DICE has got to do that again here with Battlefield 5, but this time they've got an absolutely huge task ahead of them, because Battlefield 5 is not in a great place in terms of perception with the public, and I'm really interested to see how DICE handles that and whether they can turn things around and get people speaking positively about Battlefield 5 again. But thanks very much for watching this video today. Leave me a rating and a comment down below. Did you know that I did this entire video without a script? I wonder if you could tell. But yeah, do leave me a rating and a comment. It is much appreciated. And I'll catch you all in the next one.